Good day, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Vegas Legends Winners Circle. I'm your host, Chip Chirimbes. This is brought to you by GamblersWorld.net. And this week we will preview the championship series for college football action. And my special guest, one of the top handicappers in all of Las Vegas and one of the most respected bettors you can find out there, Scott Pritchard. Scott, welcome aboard again. We've got some big time college games going this week. And of course, this weekend, 3 primary games for the championship with Ohio State, Tennessee, Penn State, SMU, and of course, Clemson and Texas. Welcome to the show once again, Scott. How was your week last week?
Chipper, always good to be on any radio, TV show with you, my friend.
Thank you.
Last weekend was good regarding the contest, the Circa Invitational, 25 of the world's best, going head-to-head by invite only. Last year, I was fortunate to take third, half game behind second place winner Tony the Great Gordon, who was a Circa Millions winner. He net won $1,050,000 back in 2021. This year they opened the field up to 25 of the world's best to go head to head, and right now they've been cutting 2 each and every week for the past few weeks. We're down to the final of 10. I'm in the top 6. Butting heads with my longtime friend and good-natured rival, Paul Bovey, who's a rock star, 5-star celebrity on this channel. He has me by a half a game, but we have 3 weeks to go, handicapping 7 games every week. Golden Nugget contest, I have 3 entries. It's $1,000 each, and last year I took 6th and 9th. This year I'm in 2nd place and in 3rd place, and also 18th place. They give cash back to the top 20, but first place is $60,000 to make it holla, and second place is $30,000. So yeah, wish me luck, my friend.
All right, I do, of course, you know that, and to both you and Paul. And by the way, this is why GamblersNet is the top information network in the country for sports gamblers. We've got Scott Pritchard, Paul Bovey. These 2 guys are fighting for millions of dollars and still in the competition week 17 of the NFL. And Scott, let's get into some of these college games that we have. Before we get there, how about the way that they seeded these teams? You got a team like Boise, who, if they lost to UNLV, wouldn't even be in the playoffs, and now they have a bye, and they're skipping their way in, and along with Arizona State, who has a bye, a surprise winner, of course, in the Pac-12 coming over from, in the Big 12 coming from the Pac-12. These games, the way they seeded this, I think there has a lot of glitches, Scott, and I think there's going to have to be changes next year. Do you think there'll be adjustments? They have to make adjustments according to the way they do this.
I think so. I mean, this is the first time that we're having the field of 12, but I think it makes for good conversation, and good fodder. And again, we had the same conversations week in and week out when they were trying to determine the top 4 teams when they had the 4-team playoff. So no system is perfect, but to me, as a pro bettor, as a sharp, unfair advantage player, my friend, just let me know who's playing. Tell me when the game is, where it is, and I'll handicap them. You line them up, I'll knock them down.
I got you on that. We can only deal with what, like they say, who they beaten. Well, they beat everyone who was on their schedule. Until we see who's playing who, we can't make a decision on this. Football players, first 12-team format that they've had, I think there's plenty of holes and glitches. I mean, there's no way Boise should be getting a bye here. I just can't see that. And Arizona State maybe didn't get there, but they don't have the pedigree and the history to say you have, like you might slip Alabama in there or someone along those lines. But Bama finally is on the outside looking in. All right, let's go to one of the earlier game on Saturday. And now Saturday is an awful big day for us. It's got to be pretty exciting. 6 of the top teams in the nation are playing. SMU, who surprised a lot of people, and we're very disappointed in their defeat to Clemson in the championship game. They're going to play Penn State now. This game is at Penn State, so Nittany Lions have that much of an advantage. Both teams come in 11-2. Penn State's a huge advantage for 2 teams with the same record, Scotty.
Yeah, it's a difference in quality of opponents. And to your point, Chip, the SMU team, they have really surprised a lot of teams. Identical records of 11 wins, 2 losses. The thing that has impressed me with SMU, yeah, this is a road game for them, but they love playing on the road. They are 5-0 on the road this year. And if you look back to who they actually lost to, they lost to BYU in a 3-point game. That was back in September, 18-15. Their only other loss was against Clemson on the last play on a 56-yard field goal. Are you kidding me? 34-31 was the final in that contest. I like a lot of points in this game because, SMU can pass the ball. And of course, I like the physicality in the trenches with Penn State. They will be able to run the ball up and down the field. My play is on the over, Red Rover.
There you go, Scott. This is the most wins that an SMU team has had since 1935, even more than when they had the Pony Express with Craig James and, of course, Eric Dickerson. And my good friend, the departed Ron Meyer, was coaching them at the time. Penn State, who I don't think anyone, Scott, has given a serious consideration to be a national champion. And yet the only two teams that they have defeated them were Ohio State and Oregon. And those two teams were ranked number 1 and number 2 at the times. And those are the only two games this year that the Lions at Penn State were underdogs. They were favorite in every other game, and those two games they lost. The winner is going to get Boise. So I think they talked about Penn State having the easier path than a lot of other teams, and I think that might be the reason why. Their quarterbacking has not been spectacular, Scott. It's been consistent. This Aller, 2,900 yards, 21 TDs, 7 INTs. Penn State's going to look to grind you and chop you up. So we'll see what happens on that one. They're a heavy favorite over SMU. SMU was the number 1 seed in the SEC, the ACC, although they lost the championship game to Clemson. They outscored Clemson 24-7 in the final 2.5 periods. And of course, we have Penn State was 3rd in the Big Ten as far as the seeding was concerned this year. All right. Thank you, Scott. I also think that this is a heavy number. And the fact that SMU's record on the road is so good, like you pointed out, Scott. I think that it's a little bit easier to take the Mustangs here. I haven't made a final decision on this. I haven't closed my mind on it at all. But right now, I would lean toward Penn State and probably, the total number may be the way to go because I know that is where your expertise lies, Mr. Pritchard. So here we go. Now we're going to the next big one. Texas, a heavy favorite over Clemson. And Scott, nobody's given Clemson any kind of credit, any kind of, I guess credit would be the word to go. They're coming a double-digit dog here. And when this line opened, I think it opened 8.5 in around there, and they just pounded Texas, and they've been pounding Texas ever since. Dabo Swinney's not getting any kind of respect here. Do you think the Tigers can rise against this Texas team?
They can. Anything's possible. It's a 3-hour contract at the football game, but there's a reason why Clemson is not getting any respect. They've earned the lack of respect. Not 1, not 2, but 3 times the lady. This team has 3 losses on the season. I love teams, as you know, Chip Burr. I love teams that play defense this time of year, and I'm sold on the Texas Longhorns defense. Clemson, when you look at this Clemson team, the problem I see is defensively, they just cannot stop the run. They're giving up 151 yards per game on the ground. And I've often said, if you can't stop the run, you can't win. Also, if you can't run, you can't win, especially this time of year. So I understand the move. There's been a solid move. All the sharps, all the wise guys, all the money at this point in time has been on Texas. It has been bet up to 12, and I understand that. My play in this contest, I like under 51 and a hook.
Scott, I understand that, and I'm looking at this game trying to figure out which way to go. And you may have the righteous path here. I mean, Clemson's only gone over 4 of their 13 games. Texas has gone over 4 of their 13 games. Texas was the number 1 seed in the SEC, and Clemson, of course, was 2nd in the ACC. Commonality between these two teams, Georgia has beaten Texas twice. And remember the opening game of the season when we saw Clemson get annihilated by Georgia. I mean, our first impression, I never would have believed, Scott, that the Tigers could be in this game, in this position after what I saw opening week. Clemson's done a great job coming back. 51.5 is the total. I think you may be right in playing the under because these teams have played under all year long. Why should we expect anything different in a big game like this? I don't think Dabo Swinney's going to open the floodgates and come up with all kinds of trick plays. It's just not his style. And I expect him to stay close to the vest and try and keep this game close defensively against the Longhorns. All right, another premier game. This is our final game on Saturday. Scott, And before I ask you for any other information, Tennessee, number 9 in the country, goes to and plays at Ohio State. Weather might be a factor here. The Buckeyes are at least a touchdown favorite here. They ended up at one time this year being number 1 in the nation, and they ended up finishing 4th in the Big Ten, and Tennessee 3rd in the SEC. A little disappointed with the Volunteers' defense when it came down to it. They also lost to Georgia. It seems like Georgia gets around here. And Ohio State, of course, lost to number 1 Oregon and their final game against Michigan at home. And I guess Ryan Day may be on the hot seat after blowing to Michigan for the 4th straight year, Scott.
Well, Tennessee, they have been a little bit inconsistent offensively. The one thing I like about Tennessee is they have a very good running game. They have a star stud running back who is a game changer. But the bad news for Tennessee is the strength of the running game plays right into the strength of Ohio State. I'm going to mention the D word again, defense. I love Ohio State's defense, their rush defense. I look for them to slow down, negate, minimize the running game of Tennessee. And the fact is, with Ohio State being favored by 7 to 7.5 points, you might have to force yourself to abandon the running game, which just kind of makes things worse for Tennessee, if you will. The thing with Ohio State, the concern I have is the same concern I had, Chip, back when we did this show, when I talked about Michigan plus 20 points against Ohio State as my play of the week on this channel. I certainly didn't foresee that Ohio State would lose 13 to 10, but they have some concerns, some questions injury-wise on the offensive line. And so that continues to be a concern. But I think Ohio State wins the game. The question is by how many. So in this specific case, believe it or not, I respect Ohio State, but points mean more than opinions. Give me the 7-0 hook with the Volunteers.
I understand, Scott. I don't know if that hook is going to be available by game time. So if anyone's out there and can grab it now, they should, if they're going to follow your selections and your opinions. You mentioned the ground game, and the running game is so important here. Tennessee, one of the best run stoppers in the country, 8th in the nation, allowing less than 100 yards a game. And what has been, aside from Will Howard being pedestrian at the quarterback spot for Ohio State, and he hasn't really, he hasn't been a standout quarterback, and we haven't seen any great numbers out of him. But that also is a liability when you realize that the Ohio State running game just isn't what it has been in recent years. In the past, they had only 70 yards against Michigan in that game. They got beaten. They just couldn't get any offense going together. And here's a stat, Scott, that was given to me by one of our own gamblersworld.net handicappers, and it's from Mark Lawrence, and that is that Ohio State is going 2-12, 2 wins in 14 games straight up against the Southeast Conference, and they've only covered 3 of those games. So that's telling us that the Big Ten had struggled for years against the SEC, and Ohio State is one of the culprits in not being able to get it done. There's some pretty big games out there. Just Ohio State, I think Ryan Day is in big trouble here if he doesn't win here. I think he's got to at least get to the championship game. Otherwise, losing 4 times in 4 years to Michigan, and you've only been there 4 years, Scott, that game means everything to them. They could be 1-10. If they beat Michigan, it's a successful season. And they're 10-0 and they lose to Michigan, it's a bummer. So I think there's a lot of pressure on Ohio State to win this game.
I think so too. And again, if you just look at matchups, you look at talent, you look at proven winners, Ohio State, I understand why they're favored in this contest, my friend. I just think that 7.5 is a bit too many. And to your point too, we know that when betting football, I love betting value. I bet numbers. Right. I bet value more than I bet teams. And, to your point about getting the 7.5 today, which is readily available, my guess, I don't have a crystal ball. No one does. I'm not a fortune teller, but I will say that 3, 7, 6, 10, 14 are the key numbers when it comes to football. 3, 7, 6, 10, 14. So you're knocking out 3 of the top 5 key numbers by getting the 7 and the hook. You might not think a half point means that much, but believe you me, I give the example, Chip, of my sports betting seminars. In pro football, you have so many games. You have 272 games during the course of the season, and if you can steal, extort, get a half point, the best of it on each and every game, that is 136 free points. Very, very significant long term.
Right. And this Tennessee team, we mentioned it before, they've held 5 of their opponents, Scott, this year to their season low in yardage. So they're built more on the defensive end of this. I think with Ohio State's pedestrian offense, the way they run, and Will Howard not being a spectacular, exciting, explosive quarterback, that this game should stay under the total. And that's the way I would play it. All right. By the way, out there, don't be afraid to give us a like. You can share us and subscribe. We're here every week. This is our college football edition of Vegas Legends Winner's Circle. And of course, Sean Higgs will host a daily show, which, Scott, I know you've been on. I'm on almost daily, and you get free picks from gamblersworld.net each and every day. And of course, that carries over to Friday. They have live shows, call-ins or write-ins on a Monday and Fridays. So stick around right here, gamblersworld.net. We're going to have it all for you before it's over. We certainly have the finest array of sports handicappers in the country between Paul Bovey, Mark Lawrence, Scott Pritchard, myself, and a number of others, all champions and winners, people that put their own cash on the line each and every day. We're not sitting here, Scott, like a couple of talking heads. All of a sudden, every channel has somebody that's got an opinion. Well, our opinions are backed by our cash, and that's how we make our living. And there's no sitting there sloughing it off if we get beat, shaking our heads and going, okay, we got another one, and we don't get paid unless we win. So there's a difference. And we are professionals, gamblersworld.net. Don't be afraid to log on, follow the buy links, get Scott's games, Paul games, mine, Jim Feist, Mark Lawrence's, Matt Fargo. We've got a whole crew, a plethora of outrageous handicappers, including hockey games, whatever you're looking for, we've got. So become a big time winner. Have a great weekend. Scott, I'd like to thank you again for appearing with us at college shows. We'll be getting to college basketball once the season turns. And of course, that's where a lot of us make our living. College basketball, college football, NFL football. We just love it all. Thank you very much, Scott. I hope to see you again next week. And to all of you out there, good luck this week.